because their phone is ringing too.
Sort of, yeah.
I am very excited to have Lindsey here because, as I mentioned before, Lindsey is a wild foodist, and we were trying to come up with a recipe that could utilize wild greens and or regular greens to simplify it. I grew up making this literally, you went out into the yard and you just picked whatever greens was available. Mom called it lazy gardening. We would get lamb's quarter, plantain. Those are probably the most common, dandelions, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Lindsey, would you like to introduce yourself? Welcome and thank you very much for coming.
So nice to see you, friend. So I am an herbalist and a forager, and my name's Lindsey Coyne. I live in Iowa. We actually live on a conservancy, so I have many thousands of acres around me that I can harvest from and learn from. And so, yeah, I did decide to go out and get some lamb's quarter from my garden. Just a couple of.
We always had that. Mom would like go out into the garden, and people would look at it and say, "It just looks wild," and she's like, "Yeah, that's my garden."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
like,
fortunately, these volunteer in the paths, in my paths between my beds. And so I just leave them until they're getting in the way. And then I go out and I snip their tender tops off and pull them out. And they'll come back.
they're pretty prolific, yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you hold it close to the camera what a lamb's quarter looks like?
Yeah.
This is
So
wild greens. Yeah.
it has like a powdery on the top, especially the smaller leaves. Well, they kind of look white or silvery or powdery. They have like a fine powder on them. It's also called goosefoot. Oh, that one's chewed off of. It's kind of like an oak leaf, right?
I mean, I would say it has a little bit greener taste than kale, but I would say very similar in taste to kale in my mind.
Really? Oh, I think it's more mild like spinach.
Okay.
I do. And then I also just had some nettles that were in the way as well. So I snipped just the tops off a dozen nettles and threw them in my
Most
basket.
people, we kill those stuff. We call that stinging nettle. We get rid of it.
It's delicious. What are you talking about? Don't get rid of it. Eat it.
Just like turn your
Maybe
yard
there's
into a
different nettles.
forest.
If you, maybe they're not. Maybe those aren't the stinging variety.
No,
Oh, they are. They
Oh,
are.
are they?
I'm
Yeah.
so used to it, and I'm actually grabbing the leaves mostly. Yeah, I do wear gloves when I harvest them, but usually I'm harvesting like a basket full. This is my basket of nettles that's drying.
Wow.
This is just from the other day from a big patch that I have.
So what do you do with them if you dry them? I've always just ate them fresh.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can throw them into dishes like this, but mostly I do teas with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, my dog's here, Ranger.
So tonight's recipe is basically, a few main ingredients with spices. It's basically any kind of beans, tomatoes, any kind of greens, and then onion and garlic as your mains, and then we're adding spices, correct?
Yeah, yep. It's really simple and delicious and nutritious.
I'm already watering. I used to eat this so much growing up. It was just, you throw a bunch of stuff together, and if we had when we had a lot of eggs in season, we'd put eggs on top of it. If we didn't have eggs in season, we'd just eat it over rice or just eat it. I mean, very, very hearty breakfast. Traditional shakshuka. I grew up with eggs poached on it, but I've talked to other people that they never had eggs on it. There's different kinds of shakshuka, but it originally comes from Northern Africa, that region. Tunisia, which is like Tunisia, Morocco area, I think. I'm getting that right. But
Right.
you're going to come up with a vegan way to do it even.
Yeah, so actually, if anybody's interested in doing a vegan version, just soak a cup of cashews. You can use hot water
Yeah,
to
I
speed
got
it up
them
a
started
little bit.
soaking.
Yeah.
I love
it only
cashews.
takes 20 minutes or so. So while we're doing this, just if the cashews can soak, the other alternative is to just use eggs at the very end. We'll add some eggs to poach in the sauce after we're all done putting everything together. So
One
if you
nice
want
thing
to do
about
the vegan-
cashews is if you're allergic to nuts, cashews are not nuts, they're seeds, right?
Oh, I wasn't aware that people who were allergic to nuts could have cashews. I don't know that.
I've heard that before quite a few times. Almonds and cashews, people can eat those.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Right on.
So
So I'm actually crushing my garlic. Do you guys do you talk about like the importance of crushing your garlic about 10 minutes before you saute it?
no, I've always just crushed it and put it in right immediately. So all right, I got my camera on my prep table here.
Oh, nice.
Ready to.
So I always crush my garlic first because the allicin, one of the chemical components of the garlic, the allicin takes a little while to it chemically reacts when you crush the garlic, and it takes a little while for it to be totally released in there so that your body
So are
can.
you crushing it and mincing it or just crushing it?
Right now, I just crushed.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let it sit while I do my onion.
All right. Yeah, I love this elephant garlic I get from my local organic farmer. I always buy like tons of it and I never ever have enough. I was just like, but. All right. Everybody knows the technique of crushing garlic where you just like put your knife and just use the heel of your hand to push down on it.
Yeah.
And then if you want to, it's really easy to mince then. You just like, it's almost like you're cutting it already. So, all right. My garlic is crushed. Now we're cutting up an onion. Should I get this pan hot already, or are we going direct into the pan, or are we just going to cut up everything?
So we can go ahead and heat up our oil if you're using it. If you're just sauteing broth. You
I want to show. I guess I can't show the sideways. Let me show. I got this shirt from a food is free project. It's down in Texas where they have a community garden where they just basically grow food for people.
Cool.
Anybody
Very
who wants
cool.
to come and help learn and cook and garden and take the food, because it's just basically. I met them at the person who started that at Mother Earth News Fair when I was speaking there about living off grid. All right, so do you have a preference on a type of oil? It seems like people have preference on oil, rice, and then beans.
I
Always
see your ghee on the back of the stove there.
Oh yeah, my sesame oil and my ghee. I've got sesame oil, ghee, coconut oil, fresh rendered lard. I've got olive oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil.
Yeah, I have all of them on hand. I'm using avocado oil mostly lately. So I'm starting with some avocado oil. on my
The only
salad.
reason I've never used avocado oil before, but my local co-op had a special where they give you one when you buy something. So I had
Whoa.
it for the first time, or
I
I
just
bought
love
it.
the local co-op, you know. I used to work there.
And so that's the first time I ever tried it. And, I mean, the fancy oils I usually use just for my salads.
Yeah, yeah, less heat tolerant oils I like to just use.
All right, so we're just, are you just mincing the onion small or small?
It's fairly small. Yeah, minced,
Bite
chopped.
size, because we're just
chopped
cooking
onion.
everything down to, it just has to be bite size really. But all right. I'm only using a purple onion because I got it left over from when I made my my salad. So I had a half of purple onion. Otherwise, like I make this quinoa salad. I'm actually going to cook it in a few weeks
Yeah, it looks
for this
delicious.
cooking show.
I saw the
Because
pictures.
all right, I got a half of cabbage. Any reason I can't put that in?
There's no reason you can't put it in.
So what kind of vegetable would you say you wouldn't want in this? Can you think of any?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's fairly simple. Yeah, you could add any vegetables that you like.
I would just maybe not. I mean, we do have the strong flavored greens, so maybe you wouldn't want to add other strong flavors. And then you wouldn't want stuff that takes a long time to cook because
I wouldn't add any root vegetables or anything, but
yeah, any root vegetables because
I think yeah, like a little summer squash or peppers or yeah, any of the brassicas, they'd go fine in it. Just
I think I'll save some of this cabbage for my salad. I like putting color in my salad.
yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, there we go. A little bit for my salad later. And I'm going the lazy route, as in I forgot to cook my beans, so I'm gonna actually open a can. I used to always cook my beans in a pressure cooker, and now I've got one of those programmable pressure cookers that it cooks it really quick, but then it takes a long time for the pressure to release.
In spot.
So if you're in a hurry, you can cook the beans in like 20 minutes, but it might take 30 minutes for the pressure to release. All right, so I've got onions and cabbage. What other green? I got this kale that I you ever go just like the simple, like what is like the all-American is carrots, celery. That seems
Yeah.
like the
Carrots,
all-American
celery,
vegetable.
absolutely. Yeah, I did think of that. That would be good in this.
When you talk way over at the stove, I can't hear you very well. I don't know if other
Okay.
people can. But I also have this frying going pretty loud here.
Yeah.
So frying in there, I've got onions, cabbage, and I'm chopping all these greens in right now.
I'm
Or
not doing my greens yet.
I think I should let that cook down before I add the green.
Yeah.
I'm putting in the stock part right now, but the greens part I'll save for later.
Okay.
And then this time of the year, tomatoes are really expensive, so I'm gonna go with the canned tomato. I like these. I like these fire roasted ones. They seem to have a lot more flavor.
I agree.
But you don't have to, especially for this recipe, fire roasted, because we're putting that smoked paprika in there. I think would be fire roasted tomatoes are good.
Agreed.
Let's see. For some people who joined late, I'm going to cut and paste the recipe into the chat again. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or ask out loud, I guess. I'm excited to learn about the vegan version where but it just sounds like you just put some nuts on the top.
Well, we're gonna just blend those soaked cashews with a little lemon juice and make kind of a cashew ricotta
Oh, okay.
and just dollop it on. You can, I've tried some vegan cream cheeses before. I don't know. It's just easier to make my own and probably better for me.
So can you tell us what vegetables you put in there so far and which ones you're going to do?
All I have are my onions in right now. And I'm just doing the bare bones, simple shakshuka. And so I have my garlic all chopped up. My onions are translucent. I pulled them off. So I'm just kind of waiting for yours to
Oh, don't wait for me. I always make a lot, so it always
Okay.
takes longer to cook.
Yeah, okay. So so if I go ahead and add my garlic, I'll be adding my spices as well to the skillet.
Now your garlic, are you just rough chopping it, or are you actually mincing it?
Oh,
I think you could just rough chop it for this.
yeah. That's
I
totally
mean, overall, I think this recipe, everything you can just rough chop because
absolutely, and everything's really just easy to substitute. It's easy to just make it your own and mix it up. And I mean, that's kind of why I chose this, because you know, you can use different beans and it'll be a completely different, it'll seem like a completely different dish, or different greens, or you're adding a bunch of colorful vegetables just because you have them on hand and you need to throw them in there.
but no matter what, it's tomatoes and beans and some
Tomatoes
kind of greens.
and greens, yeah, basically. Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So for Native American, we're just missing the squash for the Three Sisters, right? No, corn too. I'm just getting ahead of myself. Corn, beans, and squash is what Native American calls the Three Sisters, and we try to have that in try to have a meal of that pretty regularly. So I've got mine at really high heat, but I didn't put much oil in it. It just lightly coating everything. It's doing a good job. Let's see.
I'm adding my smoked paprika, cumin, and I think I'll go ahead and put some crushed red pepper in mine as well. Just
All right,
to,
so
Give a little bite.
yep.
Can you repeat what that ingredient is, please?
let's see. We got
Fresh
some
red
smoked.
pepper.
Yep. Smoked paprika, cumin. So I did 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, and I just kind of shook a little red pepper flake in there. I'm not making it too spicy, but I wanted just a little flavor. And mine's back on the heat.
I would also say shakshuka pretty much. Well, I don't know if it has to have paprika, but I've never remember not having paprika in it.
Agreed. That's, yeah, yep, I agree. That would be one of the key ingredients here. It really does make a difference.
I mean, you really want it to be like that tomato smoky flavor.
Yeah.
Um,
So for anybody who came late, we were talking a little bit about these foraged greens I got from my garden. I'm using lamb's quarter. I'm about to get these all chopped up. Lamb's quarter and stinging nettles.
and again, I mean, most people absolutely think stinging nettles are the worst thing ever to have in your yard.
They are my
And-
favorite green, for sure.
I mean, now you're just picking the smaller leaves. You're not picking the really big thorny ones, are you?
Well, I mean, they'll still sting you a little bit, but I grab it by the leaves, and the leaves don't really have so much of the hairs and the stinging urethriol. But I'm just taking the first one or two, three
For the
sets,
tender leaves, yeah.
2 or 3 sets of leaves off the top of the plant and leaving the rest. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I'm gonna chop my greens from my basket full.
So whatever effect there is in the nettles, the cooking gets rid of that.
Absolutely, yes. Cooking the nettles.
Oh, yeah,
gets
the
rid of
stinging
sting.
part, yeah. So, all right.
Can I just ask a question about the zeftar? Are we supposed to add zeftar?
No,
No,
No?
we were just talking about that.
We were
You
just
were just-
talking about it earlier.
Okay, so it's not necessary. I found I had some, so I wanted to, I've had it 3 years and I don't know how to use it.
Oh,
my favorite thing.
go really well on this dish, but you actually might do better to just sprinkle it on after we're finished as like a top seasoning.
Okay, thank you.
So
Yeah.
I love
Because
using
I have some too
za'atar.
that I've never
Yeah.
used.
So my 2 favorite ways of using za'atar is if you just do like instead of garlic bread, you just like some butter or olive oil on toast and then sprinkle it on there.
Ah,
Okay, or if you just get some rice and you just sprinkle it on there. Those are my 2 favorite ways. It just gives you a savoriness that's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I guess it's mostly thyme. It says in parentheses under, like from the
Yeah, the
hills of
commercial stuff, they
Palestine,
tend to put a
za'atar.
lot more thyme in it
Thyme.
than sumac, leaves.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
all right.
yeah, it seems like it's kind of, the word is used for a mixture of spices also,
All
or
right.
can be.
So,
I'm gonna fine chop all my greens or rough chop. Why am I saying
yeah,
fine chop?
I'm rough chopping, and we'll pretty much just add our tomatoes, beans, and greens all in whenever you're ready, whenever your spices have released their aromatic properties. And
Yeah, basically probably get the spices in the oil and then you're ready.
yeah,
But I like getting a little crust on the bottom of the pan because that gives you a smoky flavor too. You're basically toasting the spice
A
and
little
giving
char.
a little char to it. And then I put like, the moisture is you get a lot of moisture from greens, right? And you get and now ideally I would make this when I have tons of tomatoes in the garden. So you're just, you're basically using up tomatoes and greens, when you have tons of tomatoes and greens in the garden, you're just like, how can I use this up? How can I, want to eat tomatoes and greens for breakfast, right?
That's why you put an egg on top.
It's just like, that makes it breakfast.
So I am using white northern beans. Should I rinse them?
Oh, no. Oh, wait. Lindsay's leading it today.
I would say only if you're trying to reduce the salt in them. If you're trying to cut back on the sodium, then I would rinse the canned beans. But if you don't have a salt issue, I think I wouldn't worry about it for me.
I've always been somebody that not wanted to waste the good juices from cooking anything. That's always been my.
Yeah.
Well, I got that from my mom. Never like waste stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm on a low sodium diet, so I always try and find the lowest sodium, especially in tomatoes and stuff. But in beans, they tell me in beans, most of the salt part is in the juice. So if you're trying to cut back on salt, you can rinse them.
Yeah, so this right here, if I poured the water out, it has, let's see, 20, 60. This has got 70% of the necessary salt for the day, this can of beans.
Yeah, that's a lot of salt.
So if
What's it say for sodium on this list of how much sodium per serving or whatever?
It says 450 milligrams per serving.
That's a lot of salt.
Yeah.
So
A lot of salt.
what did you do? Did you put the liquid in?
And then this tomatoes has 190. So even the tomatoes has a lot of salt in it.
Yeah.
So
you can find tomatoes with low salt, but it's hard to find them sometimes.
I did not, I did not rinse my beans. I just drained, I didn't rinse my beans.
Okay.
well, I think that's like, I usually don't drain them, but I think Fred just convinced me because I'm supposed to use less salt too. So I'm wasting the water. I'm pouring it down the
I
drain.
mean, even if you didn't rinse them, if you just poured off the juice, you would have less salt probably.
Or I do save a lot of the aquafaba though, just the garbanzo bean water. Because it's such an awesome substitute for eggs in things.
Yeah, I think it's, if you don't have a salt issue with your health, then I wouldn't worry about it, but.
So I grew up, we never ate white food. So when you said to do white beans, I looked around, I was like, oh, I got tons of beans. I didn't. All I had was garbanzo beans. That was the nearest white bean I did.
Yeah.
But then you alleviated and said you could use any kind of bean.
Absolutely, yes. Any kind of beans, any kind of greens. My beans don't have as much sodium. That's 125 milligrams, 5% of your.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, my tomatoes have more than that.
Yeah, I mean, even if you get tomatoes where it says no salt added, then it's okay, I think.
All right, so I got some good farm fresh eggs here for afterwards.
Yeah, we'll wait on the eggs. We're just simmering. We're simmering our whole pot. Everything is in the pot except for the eggs and or the ricotta, the cashew ricotta substitute. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Oh, our oregano. I don't put oregano in the bottom of the pan, but I need to add it now.
Oops, I put mine in already.
That's totally fine. I just almost forgot because I didn't want to stick it just in the bottom of the skillet.
Now,
Does this get served over rice? I heard rice earlier.
Not necessarily. It's not typically, but you certainly can, and it's delicious that way. It is a one-pot dish.
yeah, I mean, I grew up, mom usually, would make some fresh bread and we'd might have that with this. And again, some za'atar, some olive oil sprinkled on the bread and some za'atar. And that seemed to be, I didn't know it was called za'atar until like years later. I was actually at a gas station and they had a bunch of spices being sold at the gas station. And whenever I come across things I think are weird or interesting foods, I have a rule, like I'm allowed to spend $4 on something I don't know what it is. And so I bought it. I bought this little bag of za'atar and I got home and I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, we used this all the time growing up. And it was just, you know, dried sumac leaves and a bunch of some savory. Sometimes we'd use, what did someone say? Thyme, and sometimes
Thyme and oregano.
a little oregano or,
The oregano's in this dish, Lindsay.
yeah.
How much?
Like a teaspoon.
A teaspoon is fine. Yeah, a teaspoon. Yep.
You're just trying to get the tomatoes to be savory. Let's see. I do have some fresh thyme up here. I wonder how, add a little fresh thyme to it.
Absolutely.
I got it above my, you know, I got a bundle of it in a paper bag just above my stove so it's drying. Oh, that is amazing. I just put a couple. So Lindsay, tell us a little bit about wandering into the woods and wildcrafting. You said you do it a lot for eating, but you also do it for health.
Yes.
What got you into just, you know, eating out of the woods? Or is it out of the woods, or it's just out of your yard, really?
My yard is a big part of it. I do live on 3 acres now. We've been here 2 years. This is my 3rd spring here. And so I've got some things established and I know where a lot of my spots are, where things will just come back year after year. I have a pretty good understanding of when to expect things, but I'm also just kind of taking a walk now and then and assessing the progress of certain things that I'm looking to harvest. And I'm just really fortunate to live in an area where that is safe and everything's abundant. And I have the time and energy to do that. And that my health will allow it at this point, because there were some rough times when I wasn't able to go out, but I'm feeling as good as ever, better than ever, really.
I mean, you were telling me that partially you started getting into all this stuff for your health.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I started foraging foods when my son was a young guy, like 12 months old, when he was a year old, toddler. We moved to a farm out in Illinois, in central Illinois, and made a stir. And we were just spending all of our time outside anyway. And so I would just take my basket and I would take my identification book out with me, and I would find some interesting plant and I would look that up until I knew whether or not I could eat it, and then we tried it. And that's how I started learning to forage. And I had always been holistic in my own health, just taking the natural route whenever possible. And so it just made sense for me to start also, you know, when I was looking these plants up, even if they weren't edible, my book would tell me if there was some medicinal use for it. And so then I just started recognizing those as well and using them, like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, good for bee stings. And we tried it when we got a sting, and holy cow, it works better than anything else.
You're
you can-
talking about plantain, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody in the Midwest has plantains literally growing in their front yard and don't even know it.
And it's incredibly good for your gut health. It's so amazing to heal your
As
digestion.
long as people aren't spraying it with poison, because people tend to spray it because it's a broad leaf and they want their lawns to look perfect. They tend to spray it. But yeah, I mean, I remember anytime I would get bit by something or, you know, a bee sting or a bit, you would just get a little plantain and you'd either roll it in your hand until it was mushy, or you chew it a little bit to chew it up, and then you just stick it on there and the bee sting would just go away and the swelling would go down. And it was just like, we didn't care. You get stung by a bee, you know, it's like, oh, well, you just, and then later on, you started, you know, actually going out and harvest plantain and lamb's quarters and dandelions. Everybody has dandelions growing in their yard in the Midwest. And so those three, even if you just have a regular grass lawn, I almost guarantee you have dandelions and plantains growing there. And most
Yeah, and
people
if you
think of
don't
them
cut
as a
your
weed.
lawn too, if you don't cut your lawn too much, it's much better for the bees to have grasses and things flowering in your yard for bees. I have a question. I know there's some apps on the phone that'll, you can take a picture of a flower or a leaf of a tree. There must be an app for wild kind of things too. Is there, Lindsay?
Yeah, there are quite a few plant identification apps.
Oh man, this is starting.
Accuracy is challenging sometimes. And so I do use a plant app. I like PlantNet. I do use it to identify or make the first guess, and then I check my references against that. Because sometimes you just don't get the right angle on the leaf, or maybe the hairs on the stem didn't show up in your picture. And there are just so many little nuances to the plants that are really hard to catch unless you're using a really fine camera.
Yeah, and you don't want to obviously eat something that's not edible or is dangerous by accident.
Right. So a lot of things like what Ora's mentioning right now, the plantain, you're not going to find something that looks like that could harm you. So you can eat anything that, like, you can eat anything that looks like plantain. Even one of the biggest leaves that looks like plantain is a hosta, and hostas are all edible as well. I mean, it's gigantic, like it's so much bigger than a plantain, but as far as the leaves go, the ribs and stuff, but you're not going to find something that looks like, looks like a plantain or lamb's quarter. I can't think of anything that looks like that could harm you. It may not, if you got the wrong plant, it may not have the same spinachy flavor. Maybe it does have like a bitterness or something that wouldn't be pleasant, but it's not going to hurt you to eat it.
So when you first started telling people you go into your yard and eat what's in the yard, did you have stigma about that, or were people like, oh, that's awesome, or you just didn't tell people, it was just like something you were just excited to learn about?
It wasn't necessarily something that I was sharing at the time, mostly because we were secluded on this farm with two other families, and everybody was just working there on the farm, and we had almost everything we needed. We were not growing grains, so I would go to the store and get oats or rice or something, but we were growing all of the vegetables we needed, and it was a biodynamic farm that we were working and living on. And so they had eggs and chickens and goats and sheep and pigs and cattle. And so we—
Until you start talking about all the work that goes with that, that sounds kind of idyllic.
Right.
I grew up that way and I know how much work it is.
It is a lot of work.
You were talking about how you just go and identify stuff.
Yeah.
My mom grew up doing very similar learning like you, except she learned a lot from Native American people, so she doesn't know what their real names of things. But anytime I want to learn something, ask my mom, what is that weed? And she's like, that's not a weed. No, she doesn't get mad like that, but she does like start explaining all the different things you can do with it. And one of the things she makes for bee stings and cuts and bruises is she would mix plantain and jewelweed together with a little calamine lotion, and it would be like the best fix anything. But yeah, I can go to mom and say, I have this type of something, and she usually gives me something that's kind of bad tasting, so I get better real quick. But
Yeah.
but it's interesting, like the healthier the kind of like the more bitter stuff tends to be better for you medicinally wise.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but
Yes, the more ill you are, the worse the medicine's gonna take.
I'd like to make a point about there's no poisonous copycat of a dandelion either. So if it's got that unique.
oh man, you can do so much stuff with dandelions. So
and
here's what mine start looking like. I mean, it's like a lot of, well, I use purple onion and cabbage, so it's really colorful.
Yeah, it looks great.
And it's basically everything steamed. I would be ready to eat that right now. Just
Well, I tell you, I'm ready to blend my cashews, and
all right. I've got my blender ready.
I'm gonna go ahead and move my blender over here to this counter, and I'm gonna mute while I blend, I think. But so what I'm doing is I've soaked a cup of cashews for the last half hour, and
I put enough water to just cover it. I mean, that's basically all, right?
So then I'm draining those.
Oh, you don't use the water?
No.
Okay.
No, not for this one. Draining the water, and I'm gonna add.
And you guys just make me pour off all the good juices. I mean, like, I keep.
put it in a cup and drink it, or.
Oh, I already poured it out. Oh, that was.
I don't know. I don't save the water from the soaking of the nuts just because they have that like anti-nutrient in them. That's kind of why we soak them, to like make, and beans as well, like soaking beans. I wouldn't use the
I think I'm gonna go ahead and put an egg on top of mine to start it poaching slow.
Absolutely. If you're using eggs, you can break 1 or 2 or 3 eggs over the sauce. And if you want to cover it up.
Now, I always grew up, we would make like a little well and put the egg in the well.
That sounds great. Yeah.
And like poach, it's almost like poaching.
Yeah, we're definitely poaching them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up, we called this stovetop baking, but I think the real word is poaching.
Yeah, when you put them in water, it's poaching.
So, but I'll do half of it. Like, I got 2 good eggs there. I'll put it on that side and just got it low simmer in there. All right. And then
with this lemon juice, I'm gonna put a little salt and pepper in my cashew.
all right, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I was wondering, I guess the nuts themselves have soaked up a lot of water. Like, do I have to add much?
It should be soft.
I won't have to add much moisture to it, maybe. Now I'm just, in my case, I'm doing it in my old 40-year-old blender here. So far it's been surviving, but I'm gonna have to mute mine too because it'll be loud. Oh, Lindsay's got the good one. I've got one of those, but I rarely take it out when I'm making small batches.
Okay.
Lindsay, did you say that it was cashew ricotta or something?
Yeah, it's a ricotta substitute. Yeah.
Substitute. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the recipe that I'm following. It's just cashews that have been soaked and lemon juice, and I added a little salt and pepper, and that's it. And I didn't blend them down to super fine either. There's a little chunk to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, you're just making kind of a really rough.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be smooth.
Oh, that's tasty. So that's your vegan version is you're just putting some nuts on top. I'm trying to think. I made a cashew like nut butter where we added nutritional yeast to give it that cheesy nutty flavor to actually make like a cream sauce.
Oh yeah. Love that.
So, all right. So that's pretty much it, right?
That's it.
Plate it up.
Really, yeah.
It's just like, did you have any hard time getting family members to eat like wild stuff? Mom always had two things on the menu. It just in Mom's kitchen. Item 1, take it. Item 2, leave it. Those were your only options. If you were hungry.
This is what mine looks like, or.
All right, so that's your cashew.
Yeah, I just put a dollop of my cashew ricotta on top. And I'm good to go.
All right.
Beans, tomatoes, paprika, greens.
Just like, so I'm gonna plate it. Does anybody have any final questions? Otherwise, after I stop the recording, we're gonna sit around and eat and chat and talk and in more depth. Thank you very much for showing us well, a fairly simple recipe, but throwing in the wild component, I really like that part. Well, it's kind of weird. I'm sure, Fred, I challenge you to go around. I know you live in an area that's pretty well groomed. I challenge you to go around and see if you can find some wild greens. I bet they're behind the rose bushes or growing right alongside the houses or someplace that there are plantain and dandelions.
I'm sure there is, because we actually have lots of, this area was a big swamp, and just down the road, we have like a, what do they call it? Bird sanctuary where they have, for birds and all that. So there is lots of open land around that's kind of wild. Some of it is fenced off, I think. But.
Yeah. So Lindsay, do you have any final words you want to say? Otherwise, I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me on, and I've had a lot of fun doing this. I think I should come back and do another.
Oh yeah, the next one will be Lindsay Wilder. No, Wilder Lindsay.